ideally hope I'm not the guy who 10 years into the future is talking about something that he did in 2022.
Timo Armoo, a post-exit prodigy, he sold his first business at the age of 17, then aced an 8-figure exit at 27. He's a Forbes 30 Under 30 honoree, Huffington Post Entrepreneur of the Year, and one of the Times' most influential media figures. Beyond TV and book deals, he is a magnetic speaker and the incredible friend who pushed me to launch this podcast. Timo's here to inspire us with his no-nonsense wisdom on post-exit success in life and business.
I don't believe in legacy. Having a personal brand is such a massive cheat code in this new era of business. Everybody has a zone of genius. You're 21, 24, you haven't lived anything.
Yeah.
You also have never run a business before. So what the hell are you doing here?
Go to work.
Go and do actual interesting rather than, I want to be a VC because it's cool on LinkedIn, it's cool on Twitter.
Timo, thank you so much for joining me today.
We're good. It's going to be fun.
Tell me, how old are you?
I just turned 29.
So why on earth am I interviewing you on my podcast about this? You shouldn't qualify.
I got into a business at 21 called Fanbyte, which was a influencer marketing business, and right place, right time, a lot of hard work, bit of luck. We ended up selling it last year at 27. And so a 6-year journey of growing, scaling, and then selling a company in a pretty formative stage of my life. We took the company from just myself in my second year of university to a team of 80 people working brands such as Nike, McDonald's, Deliveroo, multi-8 figures in revenue, and our acquisition was similar as well. And so it's been a fast ride. And so I guess that's what qualifies me to be in this room with you.
That was a very fast answer. I do plan to dig much deeper into this.
Right, let's roll.
So why? Why did you start Fanbytes?
I did start it in a very selfish way. I had grown up in South London. I'd grown up in a place called Oak End Road, which I guess we have a big US audience here. So it's kind of like, I don't know, Compton in New York. And so actually what I figured out was I want to get out of this situation. And I theorized that business was going to be the way that I'll get out of this situation. And so I had been tinkering around with a bunch of businesses before. I had a very, very small, barely significant exit with a company I started at 17. And I thought, turns out that if I make something that people want and people pay me for it, and I keep doing it over a long enough period of time, I can build something that someone will pay me a lot of money for it. And so Fanbytes was started because I saw the influencer opportunity. It started in 2017 when people were looking at these YouTubers and Instagrammers and these people in their bedrooms creating content and thinking how weird it was. But I was like, no, there's an opportunity here because that's where all the eyeballs of the young people are going. So why don't we build a company that basically can help brands to reach this audience? And this to me was one of those market inflection points where I thought, okay, this is it. This is the opportunity that I think would be the thing that can, get me out of the ends, get me out of the hood, basically. And so I started it solely for very selfish capitalist reasons. That's it.
It's so beautifully understood.
Yeah. I mean, I think most founders that I speak to, there is an element of selfishness in starting a business. I think also because I started it quite young, it's not as if I had ever experienced, say, working for someone and felt the need saying that I don't ever want to have a boss or anything. It was like solely, I figured out that this is the shortest path to changing my life, therefore I'm going to do it.
So it was money and financial freedom that comes with it.
It was. So it started off really being about money and financial freedom. And then what's so interesting is, as I was running the business, I think in our third year, because the journey of it was quite short, like 6 years. In our third year, I started to realize that my motivation was still about achieving an exit, etc. But as we started to get more competitors, my motivation actually changed to become a lot more about how do we become the best in our category. And so it then moved more to a sense of competition
Yeah.
rather than just selfishly, how do I make the most of it?
And how many people do you have?
So we had 80 people by the time that we sold the company. I think around the time where it moved towards being more of competition, we had about 30 people. And it was just, I think a big part of it was my youthful ego, where I was like, come on, we're better than these guys. Like, we cannot let them win. And so that transition is something that I find a lot of founder friends also go through.
Yeah. So did money make you happy?
I would say money did make me happier. The reason why is, growing up, most of my unhappiness came from not having money problems. And so by having more money, it did solve those money problems, which therefore made me happier. Now, I wish I'd done more of that introspective work to be able to know what actually really drives me. Because after selling the company, I genuinely was like, oh my God, I never have to work again. So yeah, I made it. And then that lasted for about 3 months. And I thought, okay, so what really drives me? And I realized that it wasn't actually really the money, it was building something of significance. And if you had put me in a different vehicle where I was driven by significance, where the end goal was that I would have built something which has some kind of impact, I think that I would have been equally happy, maybe with a bit less money, to be honest.
So significance for you is impact.
Yes. And I don't mean impact in the altruistic sense of impact. I mean impact in the sense of doing something and people saying it was Timo who did that. That for me, I think was a far bigger driver than the money. Because if it was the money, I would have joined a bunch of my friends who then went to work at hedge funds, who then went to work at Goldman. Because I did a computer science degree. And every day, every week, there were these banks who were trying to recruit people from my university. And I think I would have gone that path if it was solely about money. But I think I realized it was a lot more about significance and impact and being able to say, he did something that was worth talking about.
So it's more validation and proving yourself than just money.
Yeah.
Or probably both. But you only realized it later. So you had it, you realized it later.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's so funny because when I was younger, I would hear people say things like, money doesn't make you happy, etc. And I always said, okay, that may be cool, but I would like to go and figure it out myself.
And you did.
And I did. And I think it is, money did make me happier because it solved my money problems, and most of my unhappiness at that point came from not having money. And I think that's the way that I frame my relationship with money. If I had then at the beginning thought, actually significance is what drives me, I think I would have been less stressed whilst running the business. I think I was a very uptight manager and a very uptight leader.
Really?
Yeah, 100%. I was very uptight.
You're so not uptight with friends. So it's hard to imagine.
Yeah. Well, now it's because I have that self-awareness to know that I was uptight. I would not have worked for me if I was an employee.
Would you work for you now that you understand yourself better?
I think yes. But also I generally now operate in the world with, I think, less pressure. So the reason why I think I was a very bad leader for a large part of Fanbytes, and then I got good probably in the last 2 years, was because I was very me focused. And I saw my team, and I've never actually said this before, but I saw my team and I saw my company as solely a means to an end, which was, before I'm 30, I want to have enough money that I'm set, and the team is just, and the idea is just a vehicle to get there.
Yeah.
And I wish that actually what I had done before was gone. Actually, I am driven by building something of significance, and the people and the team are part of that significance.
Would you then still sell the business? Because it sounds like you created this artificial deadline for yourself by 30.
Yeah.
I need to prove myself. I need to sell.
Yeah.
If you knew what you know now about your actual motivation, would you have sold?
I think I would still have sold.
Okay.
I think the reason I would still have sold is because actually by selling the company inadvertently, I tick the box of significance. Because think about it, right? I was a black kid who grew up in South London, who went to a state school, and who grew up in a fourth floor council estate in one of the poorest places in the city. And then I started a business in my second year of university, and then I sold that company.
Mm-hmm.
That's significant, right? And I think like that final bit of, and then he sold it, and then he did well from it, I think that adds to the significance.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I think if it was, and then he started the company, and it just kept going and going and going. For me, I think the narrative is less significant, because I think anyone can start a company, not many can sell it for tens of millions of pounds.
Yeah.
And so for me, it did add that element of significance.
There's evidence of your achievement,
There is
your success.
Exactly. There is evidence of it. There is proof that I was able to do something. Now, during the business, when I say that if I knew about significance, I would have been driven, I would have enjoyed it a bit more, is that I saw the only significant thing of the business was selling it.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, it was like, if Fanbytes had not been acquired, the business might as well not have existed.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
Because that was the means to an end.
Right.
And that was because my sole thing was, there's one thing that's significant is like selling the company, being known as the person who sold the company,
Mm-hmm.
and then having the money to prove it. But if I thought, well, actually, significance is about impacting an industry. Significance is about the people that you hire. It's about the lives that you're able to change whilst running the company. It's about the stories that you're able to tell whilst you're doing the company. It's not just at the end. I would have enjoyed it a lot.
So you don't regret selling. You would still have sold. You would have done it differently. So do you plan to have another business where you can do all these things?
Yes, 100%. When I speak to a lot of founders, what I tend to see, especially post-exit founders, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, is the first business is almost a blueprint on things not to do. And then the second or third business is their way of going, all right, here are the 101 things I should not have done. I am now going to make sure that I don't do them for the second company or the third company. And so for me, that's the framework that I'm using for my next thing.
Well, my observation is that it works really well if the person processes the experience of the first business well enough. Takes time, heals, goes through introspection, knows themselves better, have some sense of purpose, which may change over time, but at least they're motivated by something that has very clear definition.
Yeah.
Then it works. What I see a lot is some people just rush into the next business right away. And oftentimes then they give up because actually they don't have enough drive, because they don't have that purpose. And money is no longer a purpose, and proving yourself is no longer a purpose. So they just give up because it's still hard, even the second time around.
Yeah.
I made that mistake, so it's close to the heart. And then I closed that company.
Yeah.
I just wasn't driven.
Yeah, that's interesting. How long into the company did you close it?
About a year and a half.
Got it.
And, quite a significant financial investment, because second time around, I also thought, oh, now I can afford to not work as hard to hire better people than I did before. All that makes a lot of sense. What I completely underestimated is how I myself would feel. So I had the best team in the world, and I still closed the business.
Interesting.
Very important.
Because you just didn't have the drive to do it.
Yeah, because I didn't take that time. And after I closed it, I went through the full process, and I waited until I, felt that I knew what I wanted.
Yeah.
Not what I was doing, That's what I wanted.
It's so interesting because one of my co-founders has just gone on to start a new business, like pretty much right after we sold, went on to start a new business. And I haven't started a new business, and it's been about 18 months now. And sometimes, he and I talk about his business, and I'm like, oh, that's cool, that's quite cool. And sometimes I'm like, why haven't I started something else?
Yeah.
But I also know that I'm just not in the right frame of mind. And I, as you said, I haven't quite figured out the reason I would do it. It's just more like, well, I'm 29. How else do I spend my time? The thing I really enjoy is business. I love talking about business. I love creating content about business. I love reading about business. So like, if that is what I enjoy, then I should be doing a business. But then, as you mentioned, even though our journey was 6 years, like, business is hard, right?
It is.
Difficult. And I think having been through that experience, I'm like, okay, well, it's going to be hard. Are you prepared to not after 6 months be like, why the heck am I doing this? Like, I don't need to do this. So, I'm now going to go to Costa Rica, right? So I think that because I'm not in that mind frame just yet, I'm not ready to. And it encourages me to hear that you have a similar thing and you shut yours down after a year, because I think that can definitely be a pain point for a lot of exited entrepreneurs.
Yeah. And closing that business was very hard.
Yeah.
My ego, and I cried.
Oh, really?
For like 2 months.
Oh, no.
Yeah, because the business was also at a good stage when there was a product market fit, there was a good team. But sometimes you just have to be honest with yourself. Like, it really wasn't driven to push it forward. And I did the right thing. I wish I started it a bit later. I wish I gave myself a bit more time. So I personally think you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
But how do you spend your time now?
I spend my time in 3 ways. So one of the things at the beginning of the year, I said, I have a unique set of opportunity and a unique set of skills and a unique set of experiences which can basically help other people with their journey of building companies that can be sold. And so I started creating content on social, and it seems as if people really like it now. So we've built an audience of like hundreds of thousands of people across social entrepreneurs who basically they engage with my content, watch my content, share my content. And that's pretty impactful. I think the second thing is also like helping other friends sell their companies. When we sold the company, that whole experience of like signing the documents on DocuSign and doing stuff over Zoom and then thinking like, is this going to work? Is this not going to work? The letters of intent, the data room. I was like, this is so exciting. And I had a number of friends who were thinking about how they can package their business to sell at some point, how they sell it, and they had no clue to do that. So actually, one thing that has been very useful for me is, helping them, yes, taking a percentage because, it's not all charity here, but like taking a percentage and like helping them sell. That's been very, very exciting. And then the third is actually trying to find more of myself. My other co-founder, he and I had a joke, which was like, he is a very woo-woo person, like believes a lot in the metaphysical and the self and all of that. And I'd always be like, dude, just work, right? just forget all this mumbo jumbo. And now I'm spending time thinking about the mumbo jumbo, and I am realizing that actually I need to understand more of myself, what drives me, what motivates me. So I'm almost like giving myself a personal MBA where I'm like studying myself, what drives me, what moves me, who are the type of people that I like to spend my time around, etc., etc. And so those 3 things are very, very interesting. It's kind of understanding self, helping other people achieve a similar outcome, and then creating content. I think the amalgamation of all those does bring me a lot of satisfaction.
It must keep you quite busy. Maybe you won't want to do another thing.
I've never shared this before, and I'm going to share it on here. I think I'm going to build another thing just to prove to myself that I can do it again.
Okay.
I think so. I think when Fanbyte was acquired, I thought to myself, I dearly hope I'm not the guy who 10 years into the future is talking about something that he did in 2022.
Yeah.
Because it's very easy to do that. And I think for so many founders who go through that, I think 5 or 10% of their mind is that nagging feeling in the back which says, ooh, maybe I got lucky.
Yeah.
Because we sold in May, and then in like 2 weeks afterwards, markets started to tumble. And I remember a few times thinking, ooh, if we left that for another 2 weeks, that could have been a thing, right? Or for example, in our process, we ended up having 3 people put in letters of intent. So it was a very competitive deal, very competitive process. And sometimes I think, okay, was that really a consequence of how good I was or how good the product was? Or was it really a consequence of how hot the market was? And if it's a consequence of how hot the market was, then actually, could any idiots basically have done this? And I talked to my friends about this, like my close friends about this. And, as friends, they say, no, actually, like, you did this, you did that. But I think that is still a nagging feeling in my head.
Sounds like an imposter syndrome. It's very popular in our community.
No, so it's not imposter syndrome, because I don't think I have imposter syndrome. What I think is almost one question I always ask myself, whether it's in fitness or in business or in anything like that, it's like, how good could you really be if you kind of put it all on the line for anything? Like, how good could you really be? And I think that's a question I ask myself for business. Because it is relatively rare for someone to start a business at 21, sell it for a ton of money at 27, and then just like continue living life like they always did. And I think that almost I've kind of set the gauntlet for myself to ensure that the next thing I do, just for myself, is to go, okay, maybe there's a process to this, maybe there is a system to this, and I can make it repeatable.
I'm yet to meet a post-exit founder who wouldn't admit that luck was a big part of it.
Yeah.
So chances are you do that next business, you exit, it's super successful.
And then I say lucky again.
Exactly.
Well, what's that phrase is, once you're lucky, twice you're good.
Yeah.
And then, 3 times, then you're just a genius. And so I think that is definitely a big motivator for me. So when I was a kid, one of the things I did was I got a scholarship to a private school, a school called Christ Hospital. For those listeners like this, sixth form, Edward VI made the school. So you wear these gowns into school and you march into lunch every single day. And I remember my first day at that school, I went there for sixth form. And I remember meeting absolute geniuses, people who were so brainy, people who had just finished their A-levels and they were 15. People who it was so obvious they were going to go to Oxbridge. And I remember thinking to myself, I just can't compete. Like, you just have better brain power than me, right? And also, you care more about academia than me.
Yeah.
You are prepared to spend the night figuring out integrations and differentiations and understanding this formula, and I'm just not. And I remember at that point was actually when I started the business at 17, Entrepreneurial Express, which was like a business media publication. And I started it almost as an act of rebellion to say, okay, you may win the academia war, but you can't win the business war, because all of you guys are not motivated to do the entrepreneurship game. And I think that sense of wanting to be significant in something is a driver for me now. But whereas with that business at 17 was more, I want to be different. And then with Fanbyte, it was more, I want to make money. And I want to sell something and for people to know that. I still know significance drives me. I just don't know like in what particular capacity it drives me. And that's something that I find kind of concerning, because I'm just like, okay, I know I want to start another business. I know I want to prove to myself that it was not luck. I also don't know, like, why. Like, okay, so you sell it, and then what have you proved again? Maybe it's just to myself rather than to anyone else. Maybe. I don't know.
Probably. Okay, so you had 3 partners at Fanbyte.
2 partners.
But you were 3 altogether.
Yes, yeah.
So what was your role? What was that thing you contributed and naturally was drawn to?
Yeah. So I was basically the rainmaker. So I was a CEO. And there's actually a really funny thing I told my COO. So we had a CEO, we had a CTO, and then we had a COO.
Mm-hmm.
And I said something to him. I said to my COO, I said, Fanbytes would not have started without me. Fanbytes would not have scaled without you.
Mm-hmm.
So at the beginning, I was very much a person figuring out how to get customers, what should a product be, how should we tailor it, what should the positioning be. And then when we got to about 30 people or so, it's like, okay, how do we build systems and stuff like that? Ambrose, my co-founder, was like, okay, how do we implement these systems? I call him Mr. Spreadsheets because like he loves, in fact, fun fact, at one point he had a spreadsheet to decode the exact traits of the perfect girlfriend. So he went on several dates, decoded.
I love it.
And he was like, okay, it makes sense now that I like this type of woman at this height, she has this interest, etc. I was like, right, okay, it makes sense for you.
Did it work out for him?
It worked out for him. It worked out for him. So my role was very much like sales, marketing, vision, fundraising, doing all of that stuff. COO was very much in fact, a very fun story. One time very early on, I went to this conference and I did a talk and I was talking about the product, showing different things, showing case studies, telling the story. And then at the end, we had queues of people wanting to talk to us. And then I said to Ambrose, okay, so can you sort this out now? Right? And I think that's a very good idea of how our relationship worked. And then Mitchell, the CTO, was very much focused on like building out the platform, building out the product, building out the data tool. And so that was the way that we split our priorities.
So you focused on people and vision and sort of the creative bit.
Yeah, so I'd say I focused on like the commercial and vision and fundraising, whereas Ambrose, I say, focused on the people and the operations, and then Mitchell focused on the like technical and the data and everything that comes with it.
So if you do another business, you are confident that that's what you want to focus on again?
That's a great question. So one of the things I've been thinking about is my zone of genius. And I think everybody has a zone of genius. There are things like Ambrose loving a spreadsheet. And I remember times he'd sit me down and say, let's discuss OKRs. I'm like, it turns out I need to go out. Just like, I do not want to be here. And I think everybody has the zone of genius. And so that would be my zone of genius. Sales, marketing, commercial, fundraising, that would definitely be where I'd focus on. Having said that, and I'm completely open to hearing what you think, is I do really think that parts of finance, ops, HR are things that make you like an all-round entrepreneur. And especially because I'm relatively young, I'm like, well, I have so much time to learn these skills. So why don't I do that for my next thing? Or why don't I start a small project where actually I'm able to get involved in the finance and the HR part of thing, rather than just honing in on my strengths and honing in on my zone of genius? What do you think?
No, I think you should stick to your zone of genius and have fun. And have fun.
Done.
Especially in your situation right now, why do anything that's not fun? Just because some idea that you need additional skills.
That's true. Very fair. Yeah. That is very. What would you say your zone of genius is?
Similar.
Okay. There you go.
Yeah. I think I'm also best at sort of organizing the process and make things happen, as opposed to being an expert on something in particular. Mm-hmm. And I had lots of insecurities about it for a while. And then at some point I accepted it, because I actually had imposter syndrome, thinking, if I'm not an expert in anything that I can label, then maybe I'm not good enough. Yeah. And then I thought, there is a label for it, actually. I make it happen.
I'm the make it happen person.
Exactly.
That's interesting. Do you find that to be the case with a lot of the founders that you speak to?
Yeah.
That they're more like commercial
Yeah.
people rather than...
Yeah. I think so. Those who end up exiting businesses, maybe the type. Because most of these people don't start the business because they love a particular activity or it's not a lifestyle business.
Yeah,
right.
It's interesting.
So an interior designer may have a business because they love that particular type of activity, but people who make it happen usually also want to have an exit.
Yeah.
They think differently.
I'm with you. Okay, that makes sense.
So I absolutely love it how you thought through everything already. It's beautiful. So tell me how your exit changed your relationships with other people and how you choose people to surround yourself.
Ooh. So I think that when we sold, I had this 4 stages of post-exit emotion. The first one was actually more of a, oh my God, I can't believe this has happened. Mm-hmm. So I remember the next day after the sale, I went to Sainsbury's or like Tesco, and I just kept thinking, Jesus Christ, I'm like, what the heck? This is so amazing. I cannot believe this is me. And then the next period is actually the period where you go, oh my God, my whole life has changed, but everything else around me and everyone else is just going about their life as normal. Mm-hmm. So I do remember probably about 2 weeks afterwards, I was in a supermarket and I was like, guys, come on, start singing for me, guys, start singing, right?
And no one cares.
No one cares. No one knows, all right? Because our exit was quite publicized, right? It was in a bunch of newspapers, etc. So what I do remember is actually on the day that we sold, when I was walking back from the office and I was playing Frank Sinatra, My Way. And I was just like dancing on the street and like I was crying as well. And the reason I was crying was because I had some like family issues that we'll talk about later on, where I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this happened. So the first stage is, oh my God, I can't believe this happened. The second stage is, guys, this has happened. Why hasn't everything kind of changed? But actually the world has stayed the same. The third thing that then happens is when you realize, and this is purely monetarily, when you realize that things that you thought were expensive were not expensive anymore. So you like adjust to your new normal. Mm-hmm. So for example, it took me a very long time to actually spend any money after the exit. Like, took me a very long time. And at some point I kind of broke through that and I thought, like, dude, enjoy yourself a bit, right? Mm-hmm. So we ended up going to Bali. We did like first class flights to Bali, the best hotels and all of that stuff, just to get used to the idea of, okay, you've enjoyed yourself and you've lived this life. And then the fourth stage is saying, okay, now that this is my quote unquote new life, how do I now live it going into the future? So you go from, oh my God, I can't believe this happened to me, to, guys, this happened to me, why hasn't everybody singing for me, to how do I adjust to the money that I have now, and emotionally, how do I do that? And then the fourth thing is, okay, now I've adjusted, what now are you going to do next? Yeah. How now are you going to shape your future? So those were the emotions that I went through. And all through the different parts of that, I think the people I was with, I wouldn't say anyone treated me differently. I'd say that it made some family things a bit odd, right? Because I never shared the number. You can kind of deduce, I think, the time to an article on it or something like that. But, you know, some family members thought, I had 100 million. And it's like, well, no, right? And so because of that, there's all that dynamics. But the main thing is like those 4 waves were definitely something that I felt.
Did you get requests for money from family members or close friends?
Yes, I did. But also, I think I was very aware that will happen. In fact, before we sold, I spoke to a few friends who had also sold their companies. And they told me that there are a number of things that would happen that you just have to be very comfortable with. Number 1, never loan money out to a family or friend. Just give them the money. Number 2, families would always think that you have way more money than you actually do. And you just have to keep quiet about it. And then number 3, make sure that you buy yourself a really interesting gift to commemorate. Those were the 3 things that he said. And it took me a while to internalize those, but I did all 3.
So it never caused you any significant issues?
No. But I also think that what helped was like people know me as a very relatively serious person, someone who's a very grounded person. And so because of that, even if a family member was to come out, I just say, actually, no. Or yes, but here's exactly what I'm going to give you. And that's it. It kind of helps that I don't have a big family.
Lucky you.
Yeah. Do you have a big family?
Yeah. But I got more requests from friends than family.
Yeah. Friends was not so much. Friends was actually not so much. I think it's because actually so many of my friends that I have were also friends that I had at the beginning. And so they saw me grind, like they saw me struggle, they saw me put in efforts. And I think that they actually come to me more for like business advice and business expertise rather than money. Because I also think that a part of it is like, they know that I got them, right? They know if there was any financial hardship, they can come to me. And because of that, it's almost like I would only come to Tim if it's actually something serious. Not, oh no, there is a mouse in my house and I need to, like get an exterminator. Can you pay for it? Right? But if it's like something very serious, they know that. Yeah.
Did you lose any friends after you exit?
That's a great question that I had never thought about. Did I lose any friends? I don't think I lost any friends. I think that my friends gained a much deeper appreciation of our friendship. So by that, I mean, a lot of my friends I was with were the same friends that I had at the beginning. And so for so many of them, they were there when I was like, sorry guys, I can't come out tonight because I am working. They were there when I was creating presentations. They were there when I was trying to, code the first version of our shitty website. They were there when they saw all of these things. And so there's more of an appreciation of the fact that, wow. And I think it's more inspiring to be like, wow, okay, if Timo can do this, then I can also, whether it's a business, whether it is being exceptional at their job, whether it's being an athlete, I can push myself as well and see what I can do.
Makes a lot of sense. So today, what money means to you?
So I think money means ownership of time and optionality. By ownership of time, I mean there are so many small things, small niggles during the day and during the week that having the money is able to take care of. And I never truly appreciated that until I had money. And in terms of optionality, it is the fact that I can choose to do things out of a position of an abundance and not scarcity. I think beforehand, I used to think about things very much from a scarcity mindset. To be honest, that was some work I had to do even after we sold. I was very much still thinking about things from a scarcity.
Which makes a lot of sense, given your childhood story.
Yeah.
Where would you possibly have got abundance mindset from?
And absolutely nowhere. And you had to practice it, right? Like the way I see abundance and thinking in a certain way is it's like any muscle, right? If you are working out in the gym, you don't just do one day of leg extensions and suddenly your legs are amazing. You keep doing it, you keep training the muscle, and then eventually over time you then have strong legs. And I think this is the case with also mindset and abundance, that you have to start very small and just repeatedly hone your abundance muscle to think, okay, this is fine. This is the way that we think about money. This is the way that we think about options.
So for you, your abundance mindset is about optionality.
Yes.
That's how you define your abundance mindset.
Yeah. It is about optionality. It is about not settling for the default option. And I think that actually applies to a lot of things, like including where you live, for example, right? Like in January, I'm going to South Africa for a month. And that's just because my friend was like, hey, let's go to South Africa. It's like, okay, yeah, let's go. And I think that optionality to say, yes, we could spend January in London, or we could spend in South Africa, right? But all the way to the smallest thing, like, okay, I need a new pair of trainers. I could get these Nikes, or I could get these Pumas, or I could just get both of them because I like both of them. And or a good one is about, hanging out with friends, right? It is, well, I could force myself to enjoy time with these people. But I know they're not my people. I know they're not my vibe. I know they're not on my wave. I know they're just really looking at completely different things. I choose to not spend my time with them. There have been so many times where there have been so many times where I have been in a circle of people and I just say, okay, guys, I think I'm going to leave now. And then I just leave. And they ask me why. I say, well,
because I can.
Because I'm not quite enjoying this conversation.
Yeah.
And then I leave. And now, the thing about that is that doesn't have necessarily to do with the fact that like you have money to help you do that. But it's more like if you are thinking abundantly in all these different parts of your life, then actually in your relationships, that should be a very important that should be a very important thing for you to also think abundantly. Like, do I want to be with this circle of friends? Do I want to be with this person? Okay, no. Therefore, go next.
So you kept all your old friends, which is brilliant and actually not that common in my experience. But did you intentionally think about adding different types of people into your circle?
Oh, great question. Yes. I think that there are a set of new friends and genuine friends that I have made like since last year that I didn't have before. Now, one of the things that helps is obviously if you are an exited founder, it is easier to then network with other exited founders, right? Generally. I do think I was conscious that I wanted to add more people who had as deep an interest in business and personal development as I did. And I think that my friendship group, amazing friendship group, but they weren't like as into business as I was. I could be like really tired at 2:30 a.m. And if someone came to me and said, okay, so there's this business idea, I'm like, all right, we're up. Let's go. And I wanted to surround myself with that a lot more. Actually, here's a really funny thing. About 6 months after we sold, so around October, October, yes. On the 8th of October, that was my birthday. I sat down and I said, like, what type of life do I want? And what do I choose to work on? But also specifically, who do I want to be around? And I wrote that the people that I want to be around are people that inspire me, people that I inspire, and also people that I genuinely really love the conversation that we have. Because I realized that often there were some conversations I'd be in, and if you asked me 24 hours after, what did you talk about? It's like, I actually have no freaking clue, right? But with this deciding the type of conversations that you want to have, it led me to then opening friendships, opening relationships with people that I thought, oh yeah, this is what I really enjoy. And it's not because that person is rich or that person is wealthy. It is because like their interests are the same as mine now. I love geeking out about business, but I also love geeking out about like investment and portfolio strategy. I love that, right? And I love talking about fitness and going to the gym and doing all of these things. And so I consciously decided the type of people who would also be interested in that.
So you brought us to the question of how you manage your money and portfolio.
Yeah. So what's so interesting, and I'm sure that you went through this even more, was if there is anything public about someone who has made a bit of money, the wealth managers and the banks just descend like vultures. And I think probably 2-3 months afterwards, I kind of got the same thing as well. And if I'm being honest, I kind of enjoyed them pitching to me. You know, I loved Rothschild and Goldman and JP and Coots and Arbuthnot and all these people just like sitting there. Yes, you can do this. You can do that. Oh yeah, tell me, man. Tell me what I can do if only I pay you fees, right? But I knew I was never ever going to go with like any wealth manager. Just because I think I wanted to train myself and understand how to manage money. Because I think that you work really hard for your money and then you just give it to someone who just, dumps it into like an index or something like that. And it's like, oh, well, there you go. Here are my fees. So how do I manage my money? I think I do something quite similar to a lot of people. Actually, beforehand, a very fun story is that I struggled coming to terms with having money. Really, really struggled. Like really, really, like insanely struggled. Because also, as you know, it's like when somebody pays you for your business, they don't give you cash, right? It's all digital. And so I remember so many times I would like wake up and I just check my bank account to be like, okay, it's there, okay. It is real. Because I was freaking out. I never came from money. And I never knew really anyone who had money. And so I was freaking out. I remember having this constant dream that someone was after me. Like the police were after me. Like constant dream. And I said it to a friend of mine. And she said, oh, you know the reason why, right? And it's like, well, because you don't feel like you deserve the money. I said, well, it's not that I don't feel like I deserve the money. It's more like I'm just scared I'll spend it all on bullshit, right? So that was definitely a thing for me where I had to come to terms with it before I could think about how to manage it. Mm-hmm. I speak to so many entrepreneurs or people who made the money from like actually putting in the work rather than, crypto people or like Dogecoin people. And they were like, oh my God, it took me so long to make this and I'm freakishly scared of spending it. So I had that for quite a while. Managing my money now is pretty much, I see it as a fun game. So on one end, you have your, very risky things or relatively risky things. I invest in also a lot of agriculture stuff. So one of the things I believe is everybody eats. And so if you can get as close to the source as possible and invest in the source, then you're good. So for example, one of my big buckets is an agriculture business which exports avocados, sweet potatoes, soybeans to the supermarkets here. Mm-hmm. And the returns on that are great. And I genuinely love that sort of business better than the other stuff I do, which is like index funds and stocks and even property. Because to me, I'm like, ooh, I found an edge here. Like not everyone is out here investing in import-export businesses and getting great returns, like 30% returns, or finding different arbitrages where someone needs some cash flow to buy this thing and the returns are 20-25%. And yes, it's a bit risky, but I still get that feeling of I figured out something that other people haven't. So I think that's generally the way that I manage my money. And then of course you've got your cash and all that stuff that stays in to make sure that you're covered. Mm-hmm. But I generally have an appetite towards finding what I'd call the exotic investments. I think because it gives me a thrill to know that I found an edge somewhere which other people haven't.
What about angel investing?
So I count angel investing as gambling. And to be honest, I have a very emotional tie to angel investing. When I started off, I was really just, 25, 50, just all of that. And I realized I was doing it for the wrong reasons. I realized that the reason I started doing the angel investing was because I could very clearly see the opportunity for a certain business if I was the founder.
Yeah.
And I'd invest in like an e-com brand and I'd be like, oh, well, it's very obvious the things to do for us to get this to a couple million in EBIT and then sell it. But then after a while, I kept thinking, why is this person not doing this? Like, it's so obvious, just do it, right? Or we tell them, hey, do this. And then we meet in 3, 4, 5 months. Have you done it? No, there's this other issue going on. And then I realized that for me, the reason for angel investing when I was doing it at the beginning was I basically kind of wanted to replicate another success. And I saw it as my way of doing so. And then when you internalize that you are not the founder of that business and you are kind of gambling it and hoping for the best, I then stopped. So I currently have now 17 angel investments. 90% of them were made within 6 months of the acquisition because I was like, oh yeah, you get a check. Everybody gets a check. I was like the Oprah of angel investing. And then now I am taking less bets, but more concentrated into companies that I think I can like truly help to exit. So that's been the journey that I've had through angel investing.
Do you think part of it was to do with your identity, that you wanted to be an angel investor, which sounds cool, when you couldn't say you were a founder and CEO?
That's a very good question. A really, really good question. I have a couple of thoughts on this. I have always said that I think that people want to be angel investors and to be venture capitalists primarily for ego. I've always believed this. Sometimes I'd meet, 21-year-olds, 24-year-olds. What do you want to do? I want to be a VC. Why? Because, they help companies and all that. Like, no, they don't. No, they don't. No, they don't. Maybe 1% of them do. Most of them, it's like, I want to be a VC, so in my mind, I can say, I am the one who funds your entrepreneur dreams. It's like, you're 21, 24, you haven't lived anything.
Yeah.
You also have never run a business before. So what the hell are you doing here?
Go to work.
Yeah, like go to work. Like go and do actual interesting shit.
Agreed.
And then have the credibility to then help other people rather than, I want to be a VC because it's cool on LinkedIn. It's cool on Twitter. So I do think a part of it was that kind of, it's cool to say I'm the angel investor. I now have, basically to me, an angel investor was like, I now have enough money that I can give a bunch away and gamble it away, right? It is probably as close to someone basically, be in the chair of a non-profit, right? It's like, we have enough money that we use our family funds to help the less fortunate, right? Angel investing is a capitalistic way of helping the less fortunate, right? So I do think ego was definitely wrapped in it because I wanted that position of, all right, now he's done well and now he's helping the others. And then when I realized, the reason I was doing it was just like a bad reason. It was just purely ego. It was just purely trying to replicate some past success without being the founder. I thought, that's not what really gives me the kick. So probably go do something else.
But you're still doing it.
So I'm doing it in less companies and I'm taking like active, like bigger positions.
So now it's really for financial reasons because you think it's a good investment.
And most importantly, I can see a clear exit which I can help with. So for example, the companies now I have stakes in fact, there's a company right now that we are selling and it wouldn't sell for a ton. It's selling for 19 million. 19 million is a ton, but like it's selling for that after I invested in it probably, just about 2 years ago. And I thought it was just like, oh yeah, let's kind of see how it goes. But then over time, I thought, oh, actually, there's a very clear, obvious exit for this and I can influence it. So then I spoke to the founder. I said, look, let me put in some more money. I also want to have a significant part of it as a non-exec. We're going to get this to an exit, right? And it is definitely financial reasons, but it's also the idea that I can be involved in something exited again to private equity rather than some kind of strategic. That's a big difference actually in the way I now I invest. I invest now trying to understand what the end is going to be in mind and how well can I influence it.
I wonder if that ticks the box for significance and proving yourself once again without you having to actually do a business. I'd love to talk to you after that exit to see how it affected you.
Yeah.
When it's not really
yours. Yeah. I mean, I would say in that vein, it does tick the box of significance, but more of the fact that like I helped another founder achieve their dream. So it's not mass significant, but it's like very specific significance. And in this case, I think it's really interesting because the founder has a family. He's like 42 or something, has a family, etc. And I think it's cool to be like, oh, you know, Dad bought this house because this how we got here. Yeah. And I think that
you're thinking about legacy.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. So I think that drives that significance.
I wasn't even going to go there into the whole legacy and the estate planning thing because you're way too young for that. But are you thinking about it, and how are you thinking about it? No. Okay.
No, I don't believe in legacy. Mm-hmm. I believe that when you die, you die. Mm-hmm. And then that's it. You're not even going to be there anyway to think about your legacy. I went to Egypt about 4 months ago, mm-hmm. and we went into this massive museum. And there were these 2 massive sculptures there. And on the ground it says, you know, here lies the prince of blah, 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 and here lies the princess of blah, blah. And then looked up and I thought, wow, in their time, these guys were so powerful. And now there is a water bottle next to them, and there's a wrapped sweets next to them, and chocolates are next to them. Because people are like, oh, okay. They don't remember who you were. They don't remember really what you did. The only thing really is, I guess, how you made people feel, right? Mm-hmm. And so this is why, for example, I care a lot about creating experiences with my friends, with my family, creating really amazing things because it matters how they feel rather than look at all the things that they did.
How do you think about spirituality?
So I am not religious in any way. I do think I believe in manifestation. Actually, let me see if I got this. On the 25th of July, 2017, I wrote a journal entry to myself. And it says, through my own effort and my mindset, I've come up with an idea that is now worth £3 million, making 38k every single month, where I'm being paid £800 to speak for 20 minutes. I now have a team of 6 people who are paying good money to work for me. I've made this happen and I'm living my actual dreams. This is crazy. My dad, I woke up to find him dead, and he told me he was proud of me. And that feeling there of being unable to help with debts, that feeling there is one I never want to feel again, which is why I want to succeed so badly. So I never feel that feeling of powerlessness. The more money I make, the more power I have, the more I own my life. This is my opportunity to own my life. This is going to be the opportunity to own my life. And I wrote that on the 25th of July, 2017. Mm-hmm. And basically what I'd done was I had through this and several entries, I had designed the life that I wanted to happen. Mm-hmm. And it is the life that I'm currently living now. So I don't believe in spirituality. I'm not religious, but I do believe in this sense of manifestation and basically being able to push yourself and design yourself and push yourself into the future, mm-hmm. and then live in that future.
Did you visualize it, or you just thought about it?
So I thought about it a lot. I visualized a few things. A very interesting story. Whilst I was building the business, once every 2 weeks, I would go to this restaurant here called Claridge's, and I would sit in the foyer of Claridge's, and I would just surround myself with people having conversations, people coming in, and I look in there, and I'd be like, I'm going to be there someday. I'm going to sit in there someday. I know it's going to happen. And a very, very funny thing, 2 days after we sold, I went to Claridge's and I sat in the seats and I ordered afternoon tea, and I had it. I was like, yes. So definitely there was that visualization. This is going to be it. Uh-huh. And then it was it.
Amazing. You got to keep doing it, I guess. Once you've decided what it is,
exactly. Once that's the tricky bit. It is. That is the tricky bit, as you said. In fact, I think in the lunch that we had before, one of the things that you really made me think about was the forcing function for the next thing, and the thing that's going to like really push me for the next thing. And to be honest, I still don't quite know what it is. Yes, I know it has to do with significance and all of that, but I still don't quite know what it is. Because I guess for you, like when after you had your previous exit, then you started another company, which you then stopped after a year. What specific exercises did you do in order for you to go, oh yeah, okay, now I've understood my triggers?
Well, at that time I didn't, because I was overwhelmed with my children. And I decided that, okay, this is what I'm going to focus on right now. And I actually see quite a lot of exited founders find their purpose in the family first.
Yeah.
It's kind of the easiest. So they focus on the family. I did that as well. And for a while, it really satisfies this search for meaning. I guess it feels very meaningful, because for me, at the end of the day, what's meaningful is when you give yourself, when you serve someone else. It's bigger than you. So that meaning is always that, but we grow out of different stages. So at some point I still, was very focused on my children. I love them, but I started feeling, okay, there is something else I need to do. And by that time, I already knew that it had to be something not selfish. And I read enough to understand that spirituality really is our growth from our ego, from our selfish to selfless. But it takes time. We can't just decide, oh, now I'm this selfless being. It's, I call it spiritual fitness. It's something that you do in a manner very similar to physical fitness. You learn a few rules, how to do it efficiently. And then it's about being disciplined every day and doing it. For some people, it's meditation, gratitude. There are tools that have been known to humanity forever as how to do it. But it's training yourself to be less selfish. And then I think purpose, in a way, reveals itself when you're ready.
That's interesting. One of the things I've been reading a lot about is that final point you said about it would reveal itself when it's ready. It will come, that sort of vibe. I find that really hard to almost say, just be in a moment or work on yourself and the right thing would come to you, rather than go and create that right thing.
Well, but you can give yourself permission to not know to start with, so you relax and you don't worry about it too much. And then you just work on your fitness, right? Because if you think about physical fitness, you don't expect that if you work out for 5 hours, you'll be ready to go to the Olympics. It's exactly the same thing. And I think you can apply it to you're thinking about business as well. You mentioned it before. It's really that everyday work. And it's the same in a way with spirituality. But if we haven't grown up religious, and like you, I haven't grown up in a religious family, we have to find that formula for ourselves that works. But purpose is a spiritual thing. It is about being ready to serve other people. And it happens with age, with experiences, with spiritual practices, with understanding how it all works. You can't push it. Like you can't push being physically fit in one day. But you can think about it in a way very similar to what you were saying about manifesting your dream. You can know the direction, right? So my direction is there just because I know it's there. And if you're religious, it helps to have faith. So you just believe it's there because you have that faith. If you're not religious, it's much harder because you have to do that work to create conviction. And for me, for example, I create conviction if something is very logical, undeniable. I like going back to first principles and making sure intellectually it's very logical. And then I have conviction. That's what works for me, because I don't have faith just by default.
That's interesting. And that's kind of thinking from first principle. Okay, well, what's a recent belief you've had that you have got rid of because it didn't logically make sense to you?
Well, I believe, for example, that at its core, motivation simply comes when we want to get away from suffering and we move towards what we conceive as what we think is pleasure. So moving from suffering towards pleasure. Yeah. And if you think about it, we can manipulate it quite a bit. So we can focus on how much we hate a particular situation. For example, you know it very well. You hated your poverty.
Yeah.
And then you created a dream, and you were both pushed and pulled.
Yeah.
Pushed by suffering, pulled by that dream. And to me, that's really first principle. This is simply how desires, how motivation works. And then I feel very empowered, because then I focus on creating that dream, focusing on that suffering, and then I'm driven. That's just an example of how I think about first principles. Instead of, for example, a more popular way of thinking about it, decide what it is you want as opposed to what other people want from you. It's all very confusing for me. I need to have a very clear, simple mental model. It makes sense, that's based on first principles. It's logical. And then I believe in it. So, for example, talking about serving other people, to me, it comes from very first principles, because it's natural for us to want to serve others. We are tribal animals. So people are born very selfish. Then once we take care of ourselves, we naturally want to take care of others. That's when we fall in love, we have children, and then we want to give our knowledge to the next generation. So that circle of those we serve naturally grows, because what the nature wants us, it wants us to survive, and it wants us to help our species to survive. So it's very primal that we want to serve other people. So it's more about being aware of it and cultivating understanding of it and accepting that fact than coming up with some fancy theories that are not based on how nature works.
Yeah, no, I think I can empathize, and I can agree with a big part of that, especially around motivation framework that you have, which I guess is one question, yes, for both of us is, now for you, what motivates you?
I am madly in love with the community of post-exit founders. I want to serve them. So I've identified that tribe that I want to serve. And I think I do have knowledge that would help them. And this is why I ended up doing this podcast, which is really your fault, by the way. Let's be honest. If not for you, I wouldn't have done it.
That's good.
But you pushed me and you encouraged me, and I'm very grateful, because it is, I feel, the best way to do it, the most efficient way to do it. And it gives me enormous satisfaction. And looking back, I definitely can see how I had these different circles, and I've been growing out of myself, out of my family, into this community. And it's okay. Hopefully I'll care about the whole universe soon when I Anyway, let's get back to you. It's your interview. Talking about your fitness and health, how do you think about that?
I think that is one of the most important parts of living. People say health is wealth, and it sounds very much like just an Instagram quote, but actually health is truly wealth. And so for me, it's very important that I look physically in shape, but it's something that I've always done. And I think it started off just being that I just did not want to be fat. Quite frankly.
Fair enough.
Yeah. And then I thought, actually, it's also a challenge in the same sense of a business is a challenge. So this is physical challenge.
Let's go back to that moment when you had just sold the company, you were excited. Do you have any idea what you wanted to do then with your life?
I think one of my biggest regrets was that I had no clue what I wanted to do after I sold the company.
Why was it a regret?
Because I think I then ended up spending a lot of time being very aimless and thinking, is that it? Now what? And that was a massive challenge. I still don't quite know what I want to do. But at the very least, with the stuff I'm doing with content, with the people I'm meeting, with the networking, I feel like I'm opening up myself to some kind of randomness. But shortly afterwards, when I had absolutely no clue, it was actually a very daunting time.
Is it because you put a lot of pressure on yourself that you should know?
Well, I think it's because I didn't envision a life after I had quote unquote made it.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought, well, that's it.
Happily thereafter.
Yeah. I didn't envision what I want to do family-wise. I didn't envision what actually really excites me. I had one sole focus.
Mm-hmm.
And once I'd achieved it, I didn't quite know what's next.
But don't you think it makes a lot of sense? Because if you didn't have that focus, then you wouldn't have achieved what you wanted to achieve. Maybe the time is now to do that introspection, now that you can afford it financially and time-wise. Now is the time to do it. Nothing to regret, really.
I agree with you. And to be honest, there's a bunch of things that you've said in this interview, in this conversation, and a few times I've had lunch that have implemented some guardrails for me to think about that. And you're 100% right. It is one of those things where, like, if you didn't have that sole focus and intensity, you would not have been in this position. So now that you are in this position, you can now afford to do the thinking. And I'm excited.
Have you tried meditation or silent retreats? Anything?
I haven't, and I'm really down for it. Maybe we can talk offline about it, but I'll be like really, really down for it. It's something that I've wanted to explore. I just haven't found the right people or like been in the right surroundings to really do it.
It just seems like you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself, and that's a way to explore that.
Probably.
Probably.
I think part of it, I think a part of it also, it comes from like not having siblings, right?
Okay. Let's blame the parents. That's always my favorite thing to do.
It comes from not having siblings. And so I have always been self-reliant. It comes from, as I mentioned, my dad passing away and like feeling this desire that I had to do something important. It comes from, mom and I don't have like the easiest relationship, and just feeling the need of, okay, I have to rely on myself. And so if I then peer into the future as to what that future looks like, I'm like, okay, well, you're going to design that future, nobody else. And so because of that, I am seeking to find some good answers.
It looks like there is some healing that can be done for your soul. I think it's going to be a wonderful period in your life right now, figuring things out.
Amen.
Okay, you don't know generally what you want to do next.
Yeah.
What's on your plate in terms of immediate things? Because I know you always have lots of plans.
So earlier I said that's one thing I've been doing is creating social content online since the start of the year. That seems to have been taken off considerably well. So a couple of things. I have this TV show with a TV network. I have a book that I have just signed an agent for, and a lot of publishers are fighting over the book.
That's nice. Yeah, I heard.
I also have just really been enjoying new formats and new social content that we've been putting out. I take a lot of pride in like coming up with new innovative things. Yeah, book, TV show, the speaking engagement stuff is like doing very well, but that's something that I've always done for a while. I think overall, just all the opportunities that come as a consequence of building a personal brand online, or building an audience online, or building a valuable audience online as well, is very, very powerful. And so I'm excited by that.
So basically, you know that you want to build a personal brand. You just don't know why quite yet.
Yeah. I think the short-term thing is having a personal brand, to me, is such a massive cheat code in this new era of business. You have an audience already. You're able to get into things because of your audience. People know you for your expertise, and that makes things significantly easier to do anything. And so for me, it's like, if you have the opportunity to build that audience, why would you not do so, especially with something that you enjoy?
For the benefit of our audience, we have lots of people who, are thinking what to do, and they are flirting with the idea of building a personal brand.
Yeah.
What would your advice be how to start if you have no experience? What's the easiest way for people like us to start?
So I think there are probably 3 steps to this. The first one is to not commit to building a personal brand for a long period of time, because actually it can be quite daunting if you think, okay, this is now who I have to be. I now have to be a social media personality. I now have to be a personal brand. The first thing is, I would say, just do it for 3 months. And then at the end of 3 months, if you enjoy it, do it more. If you don't enjoy it, then you say, at least I tried it. The second thing is to figure out what is your competitive advantage in the marketplace. So, for example, I sat down and I had a sheet of paper and I wrote, what makes Timo unique? And I came up with a whole host of different things, right? Like being a black guy, being in South London, being someone who had grown up in Ghana for 10 years, being someone who did enjoy like jazz, classical music, opera, but also hip hop and rap, right? Being someone who had built a business in an industry which is not deep tech or anything like that. It's just like an advertising software business. Most people can do that. Building a business in an industry that people understood, like social media industry. So there's all these facets that make me unique. And then as a consequence of that, I then started to put in different frameworks and narratives based off that. So that's the second bit, like really trying to understand what will make you unique in the marketplace. And then the third thing is to actually lower the barrier of success. So this was something that I intentionally did, where I said, all right, when I start creating content, the barrier is going to be, can this crack 2,000 views? Okay, cool. Can this crack 5,000 views? Okay, cool. Can this crack 10,000 views? So incrementally, I kept improving. And I think because I saw that rapid improvement every single week, and now we're hitting like 100,000 views, 500,000 views on content, then I'm like, oh, okay, now it's working. And now the bar is, can this crack 500,000 views? But if basically I'd started off by just saying, all right, we want to make things viral. We want to make 500,000 views. We want to make a 1 million view video. Absolutely no way would I have been encouraged to keep doing it, because at the beginning of anything, you're not that good, right? At the beginning, I would often say to my team, I want us to look at this video and in 6 months look and say, what a shit video. And the funny thing is, yesterday, we're looking at a video from ages ago, like, that's a shit video. Like, the hook is rubbish, there's no payoff, there's no reward, it's a rubbish video. But at that time, we're like, oh, this is a sick video. And so I think those 3 things of A, actually commit to just a short period of time, because I think the thing that throws off people is that they feel like now they have to have a new identity as a personal brand, as a content creator. Second one is to actually really figure out what your zone of competence and your zone of genius is, and then you build up narratives of that, because there's always an audience for uniqueness. And then the third thing is actually to set a low bar for success, because by doing that, you'll be encouraged every single day to see as the numbers go higher and higher.
And then you choose the correct platform depending on that image or that story you created, where it will be received properly, right?
Exactly. So, for example, we are bringing out a newsletter, but we didn't do that for quite a while because I actually hate writing. I like passionately hate just like sitting there and typing, right? But I love talking and I love video and I love just like the visual storytelling. And so because of that, I then settled on a short form video, which is like Instagram and TikTok, YouTube Shorts. There are some people who are listening to this who are like, actually, they are really in-depth thinkers and they're able to get out their narratives and the story and the edge. They're able to get it out through words. Therefore, you should write a newsletter. You should write on LinkedIn. So I think you're right that you apply what your competitive strengths are to something, because so many people would ask me, why don't you have a newsletter? Or you're missing out on a newsletter. And I'd say, cool, but also I would focus on the thing that I really enjoy and I'd grow that really big. So then if I want to launch a newsletter, now I'm launching it to like 500,000 people and not just like, video I have 20,000 here and newsletter I have 5,000 here and this I have 3,000 here. No, actually like focus on the thing that you have an edge in, really make it big. And then on the top of that, it's when you can start to build other things.
What are some non-obvious ways to monetize a personal brand?
Non-obvious. Oh, do speaking engagements counts as non-obvious? I guess so. Okay. So, speaking engagements are non-obvious. I'd say consultant stuff is non-obvious. Like, by that, I mean, it's not directly from the platform, but it's because people see your expertise and then they ask you. And then probably for me, the most lucrative is actually like getting into investment deals. Like, I got into a number of very lucrative deals because basically for a number of months, someone sees me constantly showing up on their LinkedIn and constantly showing up on their Instagram and constantly showing up on their YouTube and going, this guy knows what he's talking about. And so as a consequence of that, they say, right, for our next fundraise, for our next this, for our next that, he doesn't need to put in money. Actually, we just want him on the cap table and we'll just like, give him like 100 grand worth of shares, 200 grand worth of shares, because we know this is a guy that can add value in other ways. So those would probably be the 3 ways I think about it.
Brilliant. Timo, this has been absolutely amazing.
Nice. Yeah, it's been good.
I'm almost out of question. I'll just ask you one final question.
Sure.
How do you want to be remembered?
I don't care about being remembered.
I love it. You're the first person who says that.
I don't care about being remembered. Once I die, I'm gone.
Yeah.
And I don't really care. And I think there is so much pressure that people put on themselves to do something that makes them remembered, but it doesn't matter.
Fair enough. Thank you so much. Such a pleasure. It always is.
That was fun.
Thank you.
That felt like a therapy session.